you know, your personality creates your personal reality. That's it. And your personality is made up of how you think, how you act, and how you feel. So if you keep thinking the same way, you keep acting the same way, you keep feeling the same way, everything stays the same in your life because nothing changes in your life until you change, right? So turns out if you keep thinking the same way, making the same choices, doing the same things, creating the same experiences, and feeling the same emotions, or responding to your life in the exact same way, you keep doing that, your biology tends to get more rigid. We fire and wire the same circuits, we hardwire our brain, and it only takes a small stimulation or a small thought or a response to someone or something. And like a sequence of thoughts, it just turns on automatically.
Need motivation?
Watch a top 10 with Believe Nation.
Hey, it's Evan Carmichael, and I make these videos because in my first business, I struggled to stay afloat. I quit my business partner, and the thing that kept me going was studying the stories of famous entrepreneurs and seeing how they struggled and seeing what they had to overcome and listening to their wisdom and motivation gave me the courage, the strength, the belief to go one more day and see my business through. And in all honesty, I still need the inspiration, wisdom, motivation today for my business too. So today, let's learn from one of the best, Joe Dispenza, and my take on his top 10 rules of success. Enjoy.
So your biology, your neurochemistry, your neurohormones, your genes, everything stays the same because you're the same. So crisis and trauma is always the thing that gets a person to really start looking at, how do I really change, right? So we want to tell people, let's not wait for that. Let's learn and change in a state of growth and inspiration. So if you keep doing those same things over and over again, the middle life period, we become very, very programmable. So in order for us to change, we have to become conscious of how we think. We have to become really aware of how we behave, what our habits are, even how we speak. Now, this is a tough one. We have to really look at the emotions that we live by every single day and say, wow, this actually could be unworthiness. This could actually be guilt. But if you're too busy with your cell phone and your social media, and you're too busy with your kids and running around and your environment can distract you from these feelings. So my interest is to get people to retreat from their lives, right? Just for 5-7 days and remove the constant stimulation in their external environment that reminds them of who they think they are as a personality. To separate themselves from the people they know and the places they go and the things they do at the exact same time, and then fill their brain with knowledge and information, and then remind them that they're actually creating their life. So if your personality creates your personal reality, that means then in order for you to change your personal reality, you got to change your personality.
Rule number 2 is think abundantly.
How would an abundant person think? Write it down, dude, and fire and wire those thoughts in your brain and install the hardware. Keep doing it with attention and intention. It becomes the new voice in your head. It becomes a software program. Then say, okay, how am I going to be in my life today? What would an abundant person, how would they behave? And before you reach for your cell phone and start scrolling through your social media, close your eyes and rehearse in your mind how that person would walk, how they would breathe, how they would smile, how they would greet people, how they would be on Zoom calls, how would they be in traffic, how would they be at dinner. And the act of closing your eyes and mentally rehearsing the act, if you're truly present, the brain does not know the difference between the real life experience and what you're imagining. In fact, just a little bit of time, you start to install the neurological hardware to look like you already did it. Now the brain is no longer a record of the past, it's primed for the future. Keep doing it, keep rehearsing. No different than playing an instrument, no different than learning how to dance, no different than learning how to act or play a sport. Everybody's always rehearsing, right? The rehearsal process changes the brain to look like you've already done it, you've already experienced it. Now what's the essential part of that? The hardware is in place. Now all you gotta do is step into the footprint. Keep doing it, it becomes a software program. You start acting like an abundant person. Everything changes. Your energy changes, your mood changes, the way you walk, the way you breathe, your posture changes. You're out of the known, right?
Yes.
You gotta condition the body now emotionally into the future. Can't open your eyes in the morning until you are feeling worthy to receive. And if you can't feel worthy to receive, then if not now, when? If it takes you 2 hours to get there, ask me if it's worth 30 years of running, trying to get what you need matter to matter. Okay, so then the person who wrestles with their lack, they're out of the bleachers and they're on the playing field. Now, here's what we learned. Let's go back to beliefs now. So remember, belief is just a thought you keep thinking over and over again. A belief is something that you keep thinking enough times that you hardwired in your brain and it becomes an automatic program. And we have beliefs about all kinds of things, money, relationships, God, whatever it is. It's all based on what we've been told or our past experiences, right? The boundaries of those beliefs are our emotions, right? So let's just say you got betrayed or somebody abused you or your father told you that money was bad and there's never enough of it or whatever. That's a story, okay? But somehow it left an impression on you. Remember that event very clearly, and that's kind of rooted in who you are, right? Okay, so that emotion then is the boundary of our belief, okay? So how you think and how you feel creates your state of being. If you take a thought and a feeling, 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 that's called an attitude. A series of good thoughts with a series of good feelings. You say, I have a good attitude today. You have a series of negative thoughts that are connected to a series of negative feelings. You say, I have a bad attitude today. So attitudes are just shortened states of being. Good attitude in the morning, bad attitude in the afternoon. If you take an attitude, and you keep those up, and you string attitudes together, you create what's called a belief. And a belief is just an extended state of being. So if you keep thinking the same thought, you keep hardwiring it in the brain, you keep feeling the same feeling, you keep conditioning in your body, the redundancy of that cycle over and over again conditions the body to subconsciously become the mind of that belief. And all beliefs are subconscious states of being. Okay. Take a belief, and you string them together. You form what's called a perception. And perceptions are just such extended states of being that we're unconscious. And so then we edit out reality. In fact, most people don't see things the way they are. They see things the way they are, right? And people are always filling in reality unconsciously based on their memory. They could be married to a person for 40 years and they don't see the person, they see the memory of the person, right? And there's research to prove this, okay?
Rule number 3 is feel the experience.
How many things you could get done if you had an infinite amount of time? An infinite number of possibilities. That's the quantum. Now, in the quantum, there's nothing structural, there's nothing material, there's nothing physical, there's no form, right? So what is it made of? It's made of energy, frequency, vibration, thought, consciousness, information, and every thought in that realm has a frequency. So all possibilities already exist. You don't have to create the possibility. In fact, all you have to do is become aware that it exists. The moment you do that, you're changing the thought and you're producing a different frequency. Now, if the person is astute enough to feel the frequency of the thought in the quantum and not wait for the experience to happen, but the thought of abundance would produce the feeling of abundance. For most people in three-dimensional reality, the thought of abundance produces the lack of not having it. That's why they're trying to create it, right? But in the quantum, you got to feel it in order to experience it, okay? So as you get closer and closer to that point, that source, that singularity, pure love, the 0-point field, whatever you want to call it, universal mind, that the creator, pure consciousness, as you get closer and closer to it, the closer you get to it, the more bliss, the more love, the more ecstasy you feel, then you're no longer creating from lack or separation. The closer you get to it in the process of creation, the shorter the distance between the thought of what you want and the experience of having it, between the cause and the effect, from one point of consciousness and the other point of consciousness. So then people can create from the field instead of from matter if they have a coherent brain and a coherent heart, and they actually can send the coherent signal out and feel the emotion ahead of the experience. Then those synchronicities and opportunities that they're creating from fifth dimensional reality requires doing less. Somehow it's drawn to us, or it comes to us. It comes in ways that we least expect, that surprises us. Like, whoa, where did that come from? And now what does that do? It proves to you that you're the creator of your life, that instead of the victim of your life. And what's a victim? You say to someone, why are you feeling this way? What's wrong with you today? And they say, I am this way
because of that person, because of that circumstance. What they're really saying is that person or circumstance is actually controlling my feelings and controlling my thoughts. Well, anything that's controlling my feelings and my thoughts, I'm victim to, right? So it makes sense then that when things are good, you feel good. And when things are bad, you feel bad, right? So when you start changing the way you think and feel, and it starts producing outcomes in your life, you're going to believe you're the creator of your life and less of the victim of your life. And the hardest part about all of this is just making the time to do it.
Rule number 4 is relax your heart.
When people, first thing they have to do is they have to overcome their survival states. They have to overcome their programs. They got to be willing to sit with themselves long enough to wonder what's on the other side of I can't, or it's too hard, or I want to give up, or this sucks. What's on the other side of those thoughts? Those are just programmed thoughts. What's on the other side of this emotion called guilt, or this emotion called frustration? What's on the other side of it, right? So you get people to a certain point, you give them a little bit of help, but the key then is, we've done studies on this. If you close your eyes and you place your attention on your heart, turns out where you place your attention is where you place your energy, right? So if you can put your attention on your heart and not your cell phone, and you can keep it on your heart and feel it and experience it and pay attention to it. By paying attention to your heart, you're actually giving it your energy. Now, your heart tends to feel different emotions than other parts of your body. And what emotions it loves to feel is love, compassion, care, kindness, gratitude, inspiration, freedom. These are elevated emotions. So if you could put your attention on your heart, we see from the technology that we built, in time, and not a very long amount of time, just a few minutes, you'll start to see this very low frequency of the heart start going up, which means the energy that's indigenous to the heart, what the heart uses only, you're actually feeding it. It's energy. So if you could do that then, and then you can slow your breathing down. When you slow your breathing down, you slow your brain waves down. We've measured that thousands of times. So instead of this short breath, or instead of this kind of shallow breath, you really work on taking long, slow breaths through your heart. Inhale with the intention of relaxing. Hold it with the intention of relaxing while you hold it. Exhale with the intention of relaxing. Blow all the air out. Hold it for a few seconds. You're not going to die. Relax again. Inhale again. And just do a series of 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 of these, depending on working with your body so that it starts to feel safe again. That's what it is. You slow your brain waves down. You slow your breathing down. You slow your breathing down. You convert from the sympathetic to the parasympathetic. And that's what we see. Then all of a sudden we see the person's parasympathetic nervous system go up and the sympathetic goes down. What does that mean? They're moving out of stress. Okay, the body's moving into that state of growth and repair. Now put your attention on your heart. Now do something really cool. Amplify. That's the amplifier. That's the creative center. So what do you want to feel? Like, what emotion do you want to feel when a future experience happens? Whatever that is. Feel the gratitude, feel the joy, feel the freedom, and breathe and feel and breathe, and keep relaxing into your heart, keeping your attention nowhere else out of the millions of things you can put your attention on. That's your target. And you work with your body, and you breathe and you feel, and as you start relaxing into your heart, you keep working on relaxing into your heart, and you feel it. You feel that emotion. There'll come a moment where that energy will naturally start moving up to the brain, and when that happens, the survival centers shut down. Brain moves into alpha. You see more in pictures and images. You could take it's like taking a sheet of paper, a sheet on a bed, and going like this. The heart sends this propagating wave right into the brain. Just follows, boom, right after the stroke volume, and it's telling the brain to be creative, to dream, to be unlimited. So the more you do that, here's the key. The more you do it, the more it becomes a skill. Now, when a person has a panic attack, right, what they do is they mismanage their attention. They picture the worst scenario that could possibly take place, and then they say, no, what if this happens? What if this happens? What if this happens? So they're making it actually 10 times worse, because if you prepare for the worst, there's always better chances of survival. The problem is they're combining that image in their mind, and they're actually living the experience emotionally. And so they're taking that thought and that feeling, that image and that emotion, that stimulus and response, and they're conditioning the body subconsciously to become the mind of fear. after a certain point, when the body's that out of balance, it will have a panic attack. Try as you may to control it with your conscious mind. You can't. You programmed it subconsciously. Then it gets worse because after that one, you can't anticipate when the next one's going to happen. So you start getting ready for the next one. And that's what exactly starts the cycle. Okay. So what we discovered that the more you relax into your heart and feel these elevated emotions, it's exactly like a panic attack. Only it's a love attack.
Also, to make sure you're actually taking action after watching this video, I've designed a special free worksheet just for this video. The worksheet will highlight all of the lessons learned in this video, as well as pull out our 3 favorite learnings and quotes that will inspire you to actually do something. The worksheet will also give you space to write down what your key takeaways are and your specific plan of action to make sure you're getting results. If you want the worksheet designed specifically for this video, absolutely for free, there's a link in the description below. Go click on it and start building the momentum in your life and your business. I'll see you there. Rule number 5 is always be grateful.
The emotional signature of gratitude means something's happening to you. Something has happened to you. You're receiving something or you just received something. So your body then, when you're feeling gratitude, is in the perfect state of receiving. So then that means then you'll accept, believe, and surrender to the thoughts equal to the emotional state of gratitude. If you're living in resentment, you're living in fear, you're living in impatience, you could say, I'm healthy, I'm healthy, I'm healthy, I'm wealthy, I'm wealthy, and with all you want, and that thought's gonna stop right at the brainstem and never make its way to the body because the body is
not feeling it, or because why?
Because you're feeling resentment. And that thought that thought is not consistent with the emotion of resentment. Resentment has a different set of thoughts, right? In other words, once you start opening your heart, it begins to move into coherence. It begins to produce a measurable magnetic field up to 3 meters wide. Now that's frequency, that's energy. And all that energy, that frequency carries information, carries an intent. So then when you're feeling gratitude and your heart is open, you're broadcasting energy into the field. Now,
frequency.
A frequency. You lay the intent of the thought of your health or your wealth. That frequency can carry the thought of your wealth. It can carry the thought of your health. If you're suffering, suffering does not carry, that energy does not carry the thought of your wealth. It carries a different set of thoughts. So then we're teaching people how to self-regulate, because if you're going to believe in that future that you're imagining with all of your heart, it better be open and activated.
Right.
And you better know how to self-regulate. And you have to know the moment you disconnect from the energy of your future because of some circumstance in your life and you lose that feeling, if you're practicing it on a daily basis with your eyes closed, then the next level is to be able to open your eyes and do it right in the moment and be able to self-regulate and change the frustration from some experience in your life back to the energy of your future. Now, that requires great awareness and great effort. But if you have a community of people that are practicing this on a daily basis and they're connected to their future because that's where their mind is, they begin to want the future more than the emotions of the past.
Rule number 6 is change your story.
Let's just say that lack is ingrained in there. You got the story, you lived on the streets, you lost everything, you got betrayed, your business partner took everything, took your wife, you got the story in the half, okay? Okay, you gotta start telling the new story of the future, right? You gotta believe in that future more than you have to believe in the past. So how do you do that? You only believe in the past when you feel the emotions of the past. The only time you're gonna believe in the future is when you feel the emotions of the future, right? Okay, so in order for us to change a belief or perception about ourselves and our lives, we have to make a decision with such firm intention that the amplitude of that decision carries a level of energy that's greater than the hardwired programs in your brain and the emotional conditioning in your body. And your body literally has to respond to your mind. That the choice that you're making to change in that moment becomes a moment in time that you never forget. Now here's the key. Physically, the stronger the emotion you feel when you make that choice, the more you'll remember the decision. Okay, so then how do we down-regulate that old belief? if the trauma created an emotional quotient of 6 or 7, then your decision to change your beliefs got to be a 9.
Right.
And you got to come out of your resting state, and that moment has to define you. You could say, I know exactly where I was, the time of day it was, who I was with, when I made my mind up to change, right? Because you created a long-term memory. Long-term memories are created from strong emotion,
yes.
right? But if the amplitude of that emotion is greater than the betrayal, boom, the body starts responding to the mind, and you're actually giving your body a taste of the future emotionally. So you brand your...
What's possible.
No, your body's actually getting a taste of that future event.
It's experiencing the future now.
Exactly. Big explosion in the quantum field. Big explosion. So the side effect of that is if you combine that clear intention with that elevated emotion, you're basically remembering your future, and it looks no different than remembering your past. Think neurologically within the circuits of that memory and feel within the emotions of that new belief, and watch your life begin to change, because nothing changes in our life that we change. And when we change our energy, we change our life. So now the experiment all of a sudden is no longer based on it being hard or trying or wishing or wanting or hoping. That's what we do when we're in lack or separation. It's about change. So then when we finally realize, in order for us to become abundant, we have to overcome the old personality. And that's 95% of who we are, right?
Yes.
So then the side effect of the beginning of this process is a lot of discomfort. It is a lot of discomfort because you're stepping outside the known into the unknown, and now you can't predict.
It's scary.
No,
it's
you'd rather hold on to your lack.
The pain, the suffering.
Rather tell the story of that. At least it makes you feel something that's familiar. When you step outside and you're saying, I'm not going to complain about money any longer. I'm not going to complain about I don't have any. I'm not going to judge other people who do. I'm not going to say I can. I'm not worthy. It's never going to work. All those things got to go. I'm not going to feel lack. I'm not going to feel unworthy. I'm not going to feel separation. I'm not going to feel resentment. These are the things that are keeping my reality the same. Now it's no longer about abundance, it's about who you become. So the overcoming process becomes the becoming process. And so many people come to this work, they want abundance, they want healing, they want a new relationship, they want a new career, they want the mystical, but really they want wholeness. And
they want healing, they want peace.
They want wholeness.
Because they feel unwhole.
Well, when you're in lack or you're in separation, you're not whole. Imagine feeling so much wholeness that's impossible to want. That's what we're working on with people. Then you can really enjoy a sunset. Then you can really enjoy a meal. Then you can really enjoy your friends. Then you can. I talk to people that are very abundant. I mean, in the billions abundant, and so many of them say we are in misery.
Because they're not whole.
We're in agony because they can't enjoy life anymore. That's what they want. I mean, people want abundance to be able to enjoy life. They want to be able to do whatever they want with whoever they want, as many times as they want, wherever they want. That's freedom, right? Or people want abundance. The sponsoring thought is really they want freedom, right? Or whatever their sponsoring thought would be.
Rule number 7 is be positive.
The amount of emotion that comes with the thought, because every time you have a thought, you make a chemical. Right? If you have a good thought and you have a chemical that makes you feel good, you have an arousing thought that causes you to feel angry. Short term, that's okay. But the long-term effects of that keeps knocking the brain and body out of balance. So when we turn on that primitive nervous system called the fight or flight nervous system, we're mobilizing enormous amounts of energy in our body's resources that we would typically use for healing, digestion, reproduction, whatever, assimilation. We're robbing those systems, and we're saying there's a threat, there's a danger, there's something really, really, it needs all of your attention in your outer environment, and that arousal causes us to feel fear or any derivative of it, aggression or anger or pain. So when we respond to the environment like that, our body's knocked out of balance because we're mobilizing all that energy. Pupils dilate, respiratory rate goes up, heart rate goes up, digestive juices shut down, blood is sent to the extremities. The body's ready to run, fight, or hide. All organisms in nature can tolerate that short term. If you turn on that stress response and you can't turn it off, now you're headed for disease, because no organism can live in emergency mode without a moment for regeneration or growth and repair. All right, so the arousal for some reason feels good to human beings, and that arousal gives us a rush of energy, and then we need the bad news, we need the problems in our life, we need the poor relationship, we need whatever it is to cause us to feel this kind of arousal.
Because we're addicted to it.
We become addicted to the life we don't even like.
Mm-hmm.
So then...
That's the biggest aha moment. It's like, you actually become addicted to the life you don't want.
Right, so take it a step further. Then when you think about that life, you produce the same chemistry in your brain and body in the same exact way as if you were actually re-experiencing it. So now the thought is turning on the stress response. And it's a scientific fact that the long-term effects of the hormones of stress push the genetic buttons and create disease. Well, if you can turn on that stress response just by thought alone, then your thoughts can make you sick. So, because you're knocking your brain and body out of balance over and over again and depleting your body's resources that you could be using for healing. And it just turns out the stronger the emotion you feel, the more you pay attention to the person or the problem. And that's our vital life force we're giving to that person or that problem.
Rule number 8 is meditate.
We have research to show that 60 days of meditation, 5 days a week, will lengthen your life. The telomeres, the little shoestrings on the end of your DNA, get longer. That means your biological age is changing. So we have the evidence now to show people what's possible. We have brain scans that are so outside of normal that when neuroscientists see them, they're blown away, because the amount of energy that's in the brain during this transcendental moment is hundreds of times outside of normal.
Wow.
I mean, you can't make your brain do that. Something is happening to you, and that person's having a transcendental moment. And we now know that we can predict it, and we now know that we can induce it. So then there's the evidence there. Then you take our community and you see people with stage 4 cancer, with Parkinson's disease, with myasthenia gravis, with lupus, with MS, with brain injuries, with rare genetic disorders, with vertigo, tinnitus, kidney failure, all kinds of health conditions, come to a week-long event, and then at the end of that event, they make significant strides in getting beyond the emotions of the past. Now think about this. The science says that the environment signals the gene. That's epigenetics. The end product of an experience in the environment is an emotion. So as long as you're living by the same emotion every single day, you're signaling the same gene in the same way. And if that gene is related to a survival emotion, a stress hormone, then you're downregulating the gene and you're creating disease. So when the person trades that emotion and really breaks free from the chains of their past, and now they're feeling an elevated emotion, well, now they're dialing down the gene for MS, and they're upregulating the gene for health and balance. And so the person, you'll say to them, where's the disease? Well, I'm not the same person. I'm not this. And the side effect of that is a transformation and healing. So the funny thing about it is the person who has the healing is not talking about the healing. Whether it's blind people seeing, deaf people hearing, we have crazy evidence now. What they're talking about is how amazing they feel, because they're refreshed. They got a new lease on life, and so now we have evidence in our research, and that silences the critic to show that what's possible for people.
Rule number 9 is make the right choices.
The hardest part about all of this is making a different choice. And the moment you decide to make a different choice, get ready, it's going to feel uncomfortable.
Right.
It's going to feel unfamiliar. Your body's all of a sudden saying, hey, Lewis, why don't you start thinking those same exact thoughts, do the same things, make the same choices, demonstrate the same behaviors, have the same experiences, so you could feel that feeling of lack. Complain again to somebody, call somebody up and say how miserable your life is, right? And that's the known, right? So the body is always influencing the mind to return back to the familiar territory.
To the default.
The default, okay. All right, so now the person says, okay, what thoughts do I not want? What would an abundant person think this way? The people in our work that have created, I had a guy come to our event. I love this guy. He healed himself. He tried to take his life 3 times. When he told me that when he came to our work, he didn't have $2 to rub together. He's worth hundreds of millions of dollars now. And he just keeps giving it away.
Wow.
His lesson was, no, it wasn't the wealth, it was who he became. So it's the overcoming process that is the becoming process. Right?
Who did he become in that journey?
Exactly. He had to get beyond all of those thoughts of his past, all the mistakes he made, all the things he did wrong, all the money he owed there, all of that. That was like, he just had to no longer be that person any longer. But he did say, how would a wealthy person live? And when he created his wealth, what do you think the first thing he did?
Started giving?
Giving it away. Why? Because an abundant person doesn't have any lack. And he knows how to create more of it. And he's in the experiment. Well, what would happen if I keep giving it away? He keeps getting more. That's a good experiment to have, because he is actually living in that abundant state. He also had tremendous healings taking place, because when you heal your heart, you heal your mind. I mean, it's just the way it is. We saw it so many times, right? So he healed his heart. He got an upgrade. He got an upgrade.
And rule number 10, the last one before some very special bonus clips, is believe.
The journey back to source, the journey back to oneness, the journey back. Everybody gets to, you can be anybody you want to be in 3 dimensions. You can be any character you want to be in the virtual reality experiences, the simulation that we're experiencing. But if you're living by the same emotions every day, or you can't get out of bed because you can predict the feeling of everything that's going to happen in your life, then nothing's going to change until you change. And the discovery of, okay, most people have to hit their lowest point in their life where that nothing's making that feeling go away, to finally look at how they think, look at how they act, look at how they feel. My message is, why wait for that? And so what we're discovering is in 7 days, the science that we have is so compelling to show that in 7 days, there will be a host of biological changes that take place in a person's body to actually look like they're living in a new environment, they're living in a whole new life. So then getting over yourself, to answer your question, is the difficulty. That's why people will say, it's too hard for me. But what they're really saying is, I don't believe in it. I really don't believe in it. Because if you believe in it, you got to show up. And if you don't believe in it, then you don't believe in yourself. And you don't believe in yourself, that means you don't believe in possibility. And if you don't believe in possibility, that means you can't believe in yourself. Chronic diseases require a lifestyle change. And change is an interesting concept. So the hardest part about change is not making the same choice as you did the day before. And the moment you decide to make a different choice, get ready, because you're going to feel uncomfortable. It's going to feel unfamiliar. There's going to be some uncertainty. You're not going to be in the known. You're stepping out into the unknown. You're doing something differently. And the body, which has been conditioned to be the mind, the servant is now the master. So the body loves the familiar known. It loves the same suffering. It loves the same pain. It loves the same unworthiness. It's been conditioned that way for years on end. It really is running the show. So the moment you step out into the unknown, the body goes, wait a second, I'd rather feel guilty than this feeling of the unknown, because I can't predict my future. So the body starts influencing the mind, and then we start to hear this chatter in our head that says, well, I can start tomorrow. Tomorrow's a better day. You really don't feel like it today. Why don't you just have one piece of cake? You're a loser. It's your parents' fault. It's your ex's fault. It's your culture's fault, whatever it is. And if we accept, believe, and surrender to that thought as if it's the truth, that's an old circuit in the brain. That thought will lead to the same choice, which will lead to the same behavior, which will create the same experience, which will produce the same feeling or emotion. The person says, well, this feels right to me. No. That feels familiar. Crossing the river of change, going from the old self to the new self, there is a neurological, a biological, a hormonal, a genetic death of the old self. There's pruning going on. There's inhibition going on. We're no longer releasing the same stress hormones that give us the arousal. And so if there's three types of stress, physical, chemical, and emotional. Physical stress being trauma, injuries, accidents, falls. Chemical stress, viruses, bacteria, pesticides, pollutants, toxins, hangovers, whatever. Emotional stress, that's the big one. That's family tragedies, second mortgages, single parenting, 401ks, whatever it is. It tends to be then that the difficult one to manage really is our emotional stress. So if you can help people to get more physically balanced, more chemically balanced, and to become more emotionally balanced, then the effects of their personal change will be expedited.
Yeah.
And there'll be a longer duration. So the person sees you for 6 months, they start a great program, they start making the right choices, and they start feeling better. And then once they make the wrong choice, then it's a downward spiral back to the old unconscious habits and emotional condition. They feel unworthy again. And they return back to your clinic, or they return back to your consultation, and they come back with the same exact conditions. And the simple solution is, because you return back to the same personality and you're feeling the same emotions, and your body's back to believing it's in the same environmental condition. So if your personality creates your personal reality, and I believe that, and your personality is made up of how you think, how you act, and how you feel, then the present personality who's listening to this podcast has created the present personal reality called their life. Not your ex, not your parents, not your boss. You create your life. So it makes sense then, if you wanted to create a new personal reality, you'd have to change your personality. In other words, if you want to change your life, you have to change, and nothing changes in your life until you change. So then this first step in change then, 95% of who we are is a set of unconscious thoughts, behaviors, and emotions. Then the first step is to become conscious of your unconscious thoughts, to become so aware of how you behave. Do you complain? Do you blame? Do you make excuses? Do you judge? Are you aggressive? And then look at the emotions. What is this emotion I'm feeling? Wow, this is guilt. This is sadness. This is victimization. This is unhappiness. Name it. So now you're so conscious of it that you don't go unconscious and return back to the same self. And how many times do we have to forget until we stop forgetting and start remembering? That's the moment of change.
How you think and how you feel creates your state of being. If you take a thought and a feeling, 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 that's called an attitude. A series of good thoughts with a series of good feelings. You say, I have a good attitude today. You have a series of negative thoughts that are connected to a series of negative feelings. You say, I have a bad attitude today. So attitudes are just shortened states of being. Good attitude in the morning, bad attitude in the afternoon. If you take an attitude, and you keep those up, and you string attitudes together, you create what's called a belief. And a belief is just an extended state of being. So if you keep thinking the same thought, you keep hardwiring it in the brain, you keep feeling the same feeling, you keep conditioning in your body, the redundancy of that cycle over and over again conditions the body to subconsciously become the mind of that belief. And all beliefs are subconscious states of being. Okay. Take a belief, and you string them together, you form what's called a perception. And perceptions are just such extended states of being that we're unconscious. And so then we edit out reality. In fact, most people don't see things the way they are. They see things the way they are, right? And people are always filling in reality unconsciously based on their memory. They could be married to a person for 40 years and they don't see the person, they see the memory of the person, right? And there's research to prove this, okay? So how do we change a belief or perception about ourselves or our lives, okay? We've studied this. Okay, let's just say that lack is ingrained in there. You got the story, you lived on the streets, you lost everything, you got betrayed, your business partner took everything, took your wife, you got the story in the half, okay? Okay, you gotta start telling the new story of the future, right? You gotta believe in that future more than you have to believe in the past. So how do you do that? You only believe in the past when you feel the emotions of the past. The only time you're gonna believe in the future is when you feel the emotions of the future, right? Okay, so in order for us to change a belief or perception about ourselves and our lives, we have to make a decision with such firm intention that the amplitude of that decision carries a level of energy that's greater than the hardwired programs in your brain and the emotional conditioning in your body. And your body literally has to respond to your mind. That the choice that you're making to change in that moment becomes a moment in time that you never forget. And here's the key.
Physically.
Physically, the stronger the emotion you feel when you make that choice, the more you'll remember the decision. Okay, so then how do we downregulate that old belief? If the trauma created an emotional quotient of 6 or 7, then your decision to change your beliefs got to be a 9.
Right.
And you got to come out of your resting state, and that moment has to define you. You could say, I know exactly where I was, the time of day it was, who I was with, when I made my mind up to change, right? Because you created a long-term memory. Long-term memories are created from strong emotion,
yes.
right? But if the amplitude of that emotion is greater than the betrayal, boom, the body starts responding to the mind, and you're actually giving your body a taste of the future emotionally. So you brand your...
What's possible.
No, your body's actually getting the taste of that future event.
It's experiencing the future now.
Exactly. Big explosion in the quantum field. Big explosion. So the side effect of that is if you combine that clear intention with that elevated emotion, you're basically remembering your future, and it looks no different than remembering your past. Think neurologically within the circuits of that memory and feel within the emotions of that new belief, and watch your life begin to change, because nothing changes in our life that we change. And when we change our energy, we change our life. So now the experiment all of a sudden is no longer based on it being hard or trying or wishing or wanting or hoping. That's what we do when we're in lack or separation. It's about change. So then when we finally realize, in order for us to become abundant, we have to overcome the old personality.
That's how powerful we are. You could actually, like, the story we tell ourselves is how we perceive the world. And so then when we create the difficulties in our life, it reaffirms the belief that life is hard, that it's really someone out there that's doing it to us, that it's a circumstance in the past that created this. Okay, let's take away the person that did it. Let's shoot him to the moon. Let's erase your past. Now, what are you going to do now? Like, you still got to do something, right? You're still alive. And I say we already know how to do this. We already know how to do this. We're wired to be creators. We're wired to do this. The thing that stops us, for the most part, in doing it is really the hormones of stress, because living in stress constantly is living in survival, and living in survival is living in emergency. In an emergency, it's not a time to create. In an emergency, it's not a time to open your heart. It's not a time to learn. It's not even a time to sit still. So most people then that are living in stress and living in survival, they can't believe in a future yet because it's not a time to create. So getting people to that point where they make up their mind, and they make up their mind enough to begin to think, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be something else. That awakening process typically happens when people reach their lowest denominator. They hit rock bottom, because then they can see themselves through the eyes of somebody else. You feel so altered, you're not returning any texts. You feel so altered, you don't want to go to dinner with your buddies. You feel so altered, you don't want to watch your favorite TV show. You're just disconnected. And that's when you start observing yourself. But my message is, why wait for that? I mean, you can learn and change in pain and suffering, or you can learn and change in joy and inspiration. If you're waking up every morning being defined by a vision of the future instead of the memories of the past, and you get up and you're inspired from an elevated self now instead of a limited self, you could observe the old self from an elevated state instead of that diminished state. And people are doing that. So they are aware of those thoughts. And yes, it takes effort. And if it was easy, everybody would be doing it. But just because you have a thought doesn't necessarily mean it's true. And when you start looking and observing those thoughts, I think you are like Gandalf, because Gandalf also said, you may not pass, when he meant like that kind of severity when it comes to how we make up our mind about things. That's the kind of energy or intention that begins to create the biggest volume of change in our life. And I've interviewed thousands of people in our work that have healed from really serious health conditions. And I would say about 90% of them, when I ask them, so what happened? The first thing they say all the time is, I just made up my mind. I just made up my mind I was going to do this. And they made a decision. with such firm intention that the amplitude of that decision carried a level of energy that was greater than the hardwired programs in their brain and the emotional conditioning in their body. And the choice that they made caused their body to respond to a new mind. In fact, the choice they made became a moment that they would never forget. It was an event. And the stronger the emotion they felt, the more they paid attention to the choice. And in a sense, they were remembering their future. And the body emotionally was getting a sampling, a taste of the future. And they're aligned to that future, and that's when the body's healing began. That's when the miracle started, right in that moment. That's how powerful we really are. Now, what if you did that every day? What if you made up your mind every single day you weren't going to get up from your meditation until you were that person you wanted to be? Game on now. Because you'd have to do battle with all the things that are not consistent with it, and that's exactly how our brain works. So then, if you want to be wealthy, you can't feel lack. You want to be a master, you can't judge your coworker. You want to be like somebody great in history, then you better execute peace in every area of your life. That's the law. So you take the prayer out on the road now. You take the prayer, and you're the living example of the prayer. That's where it matters the most. And that's when people start getting suspicious and say, Sean, man, did you change your medication? I mean, you're looking way too happy all of a sudden. Well, you're not relying on anything outside of you to bring you joy. You're overcoming yourself every day. And people say to me, well, why do you do your meditations in the morning? I always say, easy. Because if I can overcome myself at the beginning of the day, the rest of the day is easy. Right. Because that's the biggest mastery, right? Absolutely. Is the self. The moment you lose the feeling of your future, you start looking for it because you feel separate from it. But if you feel it, why would you look for it? Because you feel like it already happened. That's when the magic happens.
Boom, that's an epiphany right there. Like, whoa, like, magic happens. Yeah, when you look for it, you're not feeling it.
You're separate from it, yeah. Huh. So when people start learning how to, we have documentation that people in this work can sustain heart coherence for 45 minutes to an hour. They know that they know how to do it.
It's so important for people to remember that they're the creators of their lives instead of the victim of their lives. The victim is saying, I'm feeling this way because that person or that circumstance or I don't have any money is causing me to feel this way. That's my relationship with money. What that really means is I'm using my lack to reaffirm my dependency, my addiction, my conditioning. That's my relationship with money, is that I put my attention on money because I don't have it. Their relationship with money is, of course, built on lack. And so when they don't have it, they feel bad. What they're really saying is, my outer environment, my reality is actually controlling the way I feel and the way I think. So, Louis, why are you in a good mood today? Things are going good. Why are you in a bad mood? Things are going bad today. So this unconscious program of victimization is saying that we're allowing our environment to influence the way we feel and the way we think. Isn't that what victimization is? And the stronger the emotion we have to our lack, the more we put our attention on the fact that we don't have it. So then the person has forgotten that they're creating reality because what they're creating is lack. Okay, let's create from the field instead of from matter. Get a coherent heart, get a coherent brain, relax in the heart, and energy moves right into the brain. We've measured this 1,000 times, and all of a sudden the person moves into these beautiful, elegant brainwave states where they're super creative, right? The longer you're conscious of that energy, the more you draw that future to you. So then, what does the synchronicity mean? It means whatever you're doing inside of you is producing that effect outside of you. Pay attention to what you did.
Keep doing
do
more
it again.
Yeah.
So generate a little bit more abundance. Just do it for an experiment. Now, when the synchronicity happens, do you think you feel suffering or do you think you feel a little excitement? You feel inspired, right? So then that synchronicity is saying, use this energy, use this feeling. It should be easier for you to feel this now and go back and do it again. Keep the experiment going. Then here comes the promotion. Here comes the email. Here comes the person you meet at the right time. Right? Whoa, we have something happening here, and then that becomes the momentum, right? So then we generate abundance. That's how we do it. And the relationship...
It doesn't just happen by accident, we generate it.
We generate abundance, right? So then if you have an hour meditation where you're tuning into your abundant future, but then you're spending the other 15 hours a day in lack, don't expect anything to change. You defaulted. You're back to the old energy. And if you say it's that person or that circumstance or that bank account, I'm going to say you're back to the unconscious program of being a victim, right? So then let's go a step further. If your personality creates your personal reality, and it does, and your personality is made up of how you think, how you act, and how you feel, then the present personality who's listening to this podcast has created the present personal reality called their life. Nothing big there. Which means if you want to change your personal reality, you're going to have to change your personality.
Right.
Nothing changes in your life until you change. Be the example. I mean, show the world what greatness looks like. Show the world what love looks like. Show the world what patience looks like. Show the world what leadership looks like. Show the world so that you can give people permission to say, wow, something is different about you. Like, what is it?
I want something. I
what
want
is that?
Yeah.
What, don't go around telling people you need to shorten, you need to forgive your father, you need to shorten your emotional response. Don't do that. Show the world what it looks like. So they say, what is it? What is it about you that's different? Or you show up and you're no longer matching the memory they have of you. Like,
who is this person?
Yeah, what happened to you?
Yeah.
Or what, that's so important for people. Because that means you're out of phase, right? So the world needs, this is not a time to go to the Himalayas. We need you here. We need you here.
Yes.
We need you to be the example. This is the time to stand up for the truth, right? And we gotta show the world what it looks like. And every single person creates that emergent consciousness. Every bird that's in that pattern, every fish that's in that school that are moving as one mind and one heart. There is no leader. Everybody's leading. This is a time where everybody's got to lead. Community
Absolutely.
is the future. No healthcare plan, no religion, no government really is going to take care of people the way they should be taken care of right now. And I don't mean that in a secular way. I'm sure there's religions that really take care of people. But what I'm saying is we need to create a collective consciousness, and collective networks of observers determine reality. There's a biology to personal change and transformation. So we have this emerging youth that has to resolve the problems that have been created by this past generation from a greater level of consciousness. And that means when everybody else is angry and everybody else is frustrated, you're going to have to show compassion. And when everybody else is fearful and worried, you're going to have to show courage. When everybody else is racing and rushing and competing to succeed and climbing over each other to get to the top, you're going to have to learn how to be in the present moment and draw it to you. And I think if you do that in the beginning, it feels unnatural because everybody else is doing something else. But how do we become supernatural unless we start doing the things that feel unnatural? So anger is not going to resolve it. That's actually what's created. Prejudice is not going to resolve it. That's what's created it. Greed is not going to resolve it. That's what actually has created it. And so we're in a time right now, right before our eyes, we're watching the world in many ways experience such extreme polarity that the wobbling of polarity is breaking the system, right? And it's creating chaos. There's disorder. Chaos is no longer the known. We're in a big unknown right now. So when there's brain and heart coherence, God, we have such incredible data. If I trained you on how to do that, you could be running around doing 1,000 different things, and I could say, Emilio, sit down. You got 15 minutes to synchronize your heart to your brain. We do this all the time. Whether the young guy is running around chasing his 1-year-old, 2-year-old kid, one of my staff is running around doing 1,000 different things, sit down. They sit down, and all of a sudden, the music starts, and you see them start moving in, and all of a sudden, you see this beautiful low frequency take place in the heart. And once we see that and it starts to build, you see the parasympathetic nervous system go up, which means they're relaxing, and then the parasympathetic nervous system goes down and the sympathetic nervous system goes up. And all of a sudden the brain moves into those gamma patterns, and that person, the heart is informing the brain. The heart is telling the brain it's safe to create. The heart is giving the brain information. We actually see this. Now,
the heart has intelligence.
The brain thinks, but the heart knows. So all of a sudden, the heart says, Emilio, it's time to create. You're out of survival. And you get these incredible ideas. You get the mystical moment. You get the understanding. You get the download. You get whatever that is. People can do that now on command. Now, why is that important? Because most people are stressed, in survival, and unconscious in a program.
and racing and rushing to try to make that feeling of emptiness or pain go away. And they're lost in the illusion of separation, thinking they need the outer environment to do it. Chaos is happening. You got to be the eye of the storm. You got to be relaxed and out of survival and awake. And heart and brain coherence means relaxed and awake. So then we take our youth, and we're investing in our youth right now because they're going to be the leaders of our future. We want to teach them what leadership truly is from the heart. We want to teach them how to make changes that are permanent. We want them to consider the whole. We want them to come up with ideas that we will be interested in supporting and backing that will create that kind of cultural change that takes place. And most importantly, that they get along with one another. I mean, why can't we just get along with each other? Take away all the governments, take away all the different cultures, and you see people you see art events, 1,000 people, 2,000 people, all races, all cultures. We all get along. Everybody loves everybody. I mean, that's who we innately are.
Never try to reason with your children when they're emotional, because no new information can enter their nervous system that isn't equal to the emotion they're experiencing. Do you want to be reasoned with when you're emotional? Do you want to be left alone? You want a few minutes, yes? Now, if there's an injury, if there's danger, of course you have to step in. If there's chemical needs, of course you have to, take care of that. But for the most part, with my children, I allowed them to have their moment. But whenever they had their moment, I would stop whatever I was doing and I would turn and look at them. And I would watch them. I wanted them to know that I was observing them. Never said anything to them unless they asked. And when the emotions wore off, I would say to them, at the end of the day, I'd get in bed with them and I'd say, it's a tough day for me today. And I would share with them what I was working on as if they were my best friend or an adult. I didn't hold back at all with them. And I would do that to create the space of safety where they could start expressing what they knew that I observed about them in the most objective way, self-reflective way. And then they would say, oh yeah, I lost my temper with Paris, her friend. And I said, I know, I saw you. This is right before they go to bed. What's their brain waves at this point? Very suggestible. They're already dipping into theta, they're in alpha, they love stories because it helps them to imagine. And then I would say to them the same thing every time. I really don't care what happened. What I care about is if you had another opportunity in the same situation, how you would do it differently. I just want to know how we could evolve your experience. And then, of course, they would give me answers that were always limited, especially my boys, but. And I'd say, yeah, well, if you do that, more than likely this is going to happen. Did you think of that? No. And then we go back and forth until we had a very clear understanding of what would be the higher road to take the next time. And then I would say to them, no, just so I'm sure that I understand this, can you repeat it back to me? Like, if that happened again, what would you do? And then they would go and say it, and then it would fall off a little bit, and I'd bring them back, and I'd review it with them until the point where they could explain it exactly what they would do. Are you with me? What did they just do? They mentally rehearsed it. Yes or no? And they're installing the circuitry. They're priming their brain for the experience. I'm giving them tools neurologically. Are you with me still? And I say to them, then if you did that, then that more than likely would create this experience, and how would you feel? And I would let them just contact that feeling just for a minute. And all I wanted to do was combine an intention and an emotion, a new emotion. You with me? Then I'd get them in bed, tuck them in, and I would tell them a story of these kids that lived in a mystical land with castles and dragons and princesses. And then I would tell them the story of these kids, and then I would bring in their story into the allegory. because there's a story. Allegory is a great way to associate with characters. And then I would tell them the lessons that they learned while I repeated it back to them in a very creative story. And so many times they'd look at me just before they fall asleep and they'd say, "Was that me?" I'd say, "I don't know, was it?" The next day I'd get them up. Of course, I'm up at, before the sun. Come on, get up. We got things to do. Come on. I connect with them. I'd always connect with them and let them know that they're important and that they matter and that I love them. And I would tell them how the day was going to go, the main things, and I'm going to remind you just so you have some structure. And then there's going to be time to play, but we have to get these things done. I just help them understand that there was some ritual involved in this, some boundaries, some intention. And then when we were at breakfast, I'd say, "What was it that you would do if you had that same situation with Paris again? Tell me." And then I would have them rehearse it again. And I would do it to the point that they would say, well, they wouldn't say that. They'd say, "God, I just want this thing to happen so you can just leave me alone. I just can't wait for it to happen so I can get on with my life."
If you don't know that that's possible, right, then it doesn't exist for you, right? Like if you're unconscious to the fact that you could heal yourself, you'll make the same choices you always do. So I'm challenged in my own way at a different level to do my best, to make the right choices all the time. And sometimes those choices, I can't rely on anybody else but me to make those choices because nobody else knows what it's like to be me than me. Even my closest friends think they know me, but when it comes down to making the choice, it's a lonely moment, right? Because I'm doing my best to try to preserve this work and to inspire people to apply it in their lives as many ways as I can. So a lot of times I get discouraged, like, oh my God, like another challenge. But I think when I'm truly in the right zone, I think the only way that we actually can grow in our lives is to be challenged, right? So, I think that the greater we evolve or the greater we become, I think the greater the challenges, And so I have my own set of challenges that I have to really retreat from my life. I have to spend a lot of time alone and have to remember that vision, and I have to get beyond all those other things that say, "Wow, my God, this might be a good time for you to quit," or "This is a good time for you to say, wow, this is getting pretty intense."
I consider myself a pretty open-minded person. I mean, I have a pretty good bullshit meter too. Like I have a truth meter that I'm a practical person.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about quantum superimposition if it doesn't change my life in any way. I want to know how it's going to affect my life. I'm a pragmatist. Mm-hmm. So I consider myself a pretty open-minded person, but I'm skeptical about things because I want to challenge them in a way that I think it really helps people, right? So when I saw, some of the dramatic changes take place, I never thought in my lifetime that I would be witnessing what I witness in every single week-long event that we've done, and we've done 30 of them now, and it's never been a disappointment. There's just a transformative thing that takes place that is way bigger than me. So when you see a person with a stroke who's blind in the quarter of their vision or has paralysis and can't move an arm, and you see that vision completely restored, and then you see the scan that shows there's no longer any blemish or damage to the visual field, you can't go back to business as usual. You can't go back to being the same person. Once you know, you can't not know. And it's so beautiful because consciousness is awareness, and awareness is noticing and paying attention. So when you see a person who has a transformation and you see the science that says in a week-long event, there'll be over 600 metabolic changes in 75% of the audience for the better in a 1-week event. When you know that, you're aware of another possibility.
that may not be the possibility that we think is free will to choose from knowns. This is now, you're stepping outside. And when a person shows up and believes in themselves and does the work, they're believing in possibility. You cannot believe in possibility and believe in yourself. Not believe in yourself. You got to believe in yourself and believe in possibility. You got to believe in possibility. You got to believe in yourself. So for me personally, it's way bigger than me. I'm very humbled on a regular basis. Every time I get another testimonial, I say this person is speaking the truth, and it's a footprint for somebody else to step into, and I think the world needs that more than ever. So for me, my greatest passion, my greatest joy, I think there's something in us, Glenn, that's so empathetic. Now we have universities that are studying people that can be healed remotely. You don't even need to be in their presence. If you understand the science of quantum physics and you understand how to do it, you can hit a target and heal another person at a distance, and there it is, and there it's gone. Now, when you see that occur, there's some kind of empathy. I drop in on the calls of these people that show up every single day of their life to heal another person. And they do at least 3 or 4 a day. And these people, they're not doing it because they want to be a healer. They're doing it because, well, how they feel when they see a mother who's comes on the Zoom call and says, my daughter was, handicapped from birth. She had a traumatic birth. She's listless, unresponsive, never looked at her brothers. And all of a sudden, this kid is smiling at her brothers and trying to talk. And you watch the people on the Zoom call that are the healers. You see we're all in tears. There's this empathy that takes place where we're contributing as a species to one another, that we were part of somebody's transformation. We gave in some way. Another one of us is better. And this kind of feeling of empathy, this feeling of connection is so profound that goes against all those survival and stress emotions that create division and polarity and separation and distrust. And so that's when community starts coming together. That's when we start to cooperate, and it's got to be from the heart. So I'm super hopeful about what we're doing.
When you're at a greater level of awareness, everything seems to be more connected. That's what the quantum is. So you're playing at that level. The synchronicities, the serendipities, the coincidences are actually informing you that you actually are creating your life. And that's the difference between being the victim of your life and being the creator of your life. Because when the environment is controlling the way we feel and the way we think, some person, some circumstance, some condition, what does that really mean? That means that person or circumstance is actually causing me to think and feel a certain way. And I don't think I have any control of it, then I must be victim to that circumstance, right? And that's a program, right?
Yeah.
So I realized in my own journey also that if I don't change my response to things in my life, I'll never change.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not that you respond. The question really is how long, right? So when you become aware that your environment is controlling how you think and feel, and your response changes, watch out, because now you no longer belong to the past. You actually belong to the future. So get a coherent heart. We know how to do that really well. Get a coherent brain. We can do that really well. Have people take all of their attention off the material world, off of everything known, go from a convergent focus to a divergent focus. We got the data to prove that if you keep putting your attention on nothing, on space, somehow the brain gets highly organized. So now, brain coherence, heart coherence, you synchronize your energy to whatever it is you want. And you got to sustain that state. You can't. We've had people that have healed themselves from Parkinson's disease, from cancers, from ALS, literally remission of the condition, and then have bad news. And in 1 hour driving to the hospital, all of their symptoms came back after being completely healed for 2 years. That's how strong those emotions are, right? So in your circumstance, right, I want people I want people to have those moments where they have to literally choose, because I think when it's the hardest, it matters the most. That's what I think. So all those things where you were agitated with a person having their moment, that could be you having your moment, right? And you would want someone to just like that person doesn't want to do that. They're just having their thing.
Can I teach my body emotionally what my future will feel like before it happens? Now, this is really important because there's a pandemic going on in the world that has nothing to do with a virus. It has everything to do with people's attention span and learning. People need a rush of dopamine in order to catch their attention, or a rush of adrenaline to learn. And so that they're dependent on their outer environment to regulate their emotional state. Now, this is different now. Now, I'm going to say to you, get in that beautiful heart of yours, and I want you to feel gratitude for the event before it occurs. Well, I can't feel it because it hasn't happened yet. Yeah, that's the conditioning. That's the hypnosis. So then when you teach people how to create heart coherence and self-regulate, then it makes sense then with a coherent brain, they can hold the image of their future. They can actually then rehearse who they're going to be. They can bring up the emotions of their future. Now, here's the cool part.
Awesome.
If they can feel their gratitude before their healing begins. If they feel their abundance or their worthiness before they have their wealth, it will start generating abundance. If they start being in love with themselves and being in love with life, they'll create an equal. That's the law. If they're in awe of life or in awe of the moment, they're going to have a mystical experience. If they're empowered, they're going to start stepping towards their success. So then when we wait for the outer world to change our internal state, that's a conditioning process, because some people will live in lack and separation their entire life because they're not creating anything. When this happens, then I'll feel happy. That's the illusion of three-dimensional reality. That's cause and effect. But feeling the emotion ahead of the experience is causing an effect. So the heart, when it's coherent, tends to produce an external magnetic field that's up to 3 meters wide. Now you got a Wi-Fi signal. Now, when you have a coherent brain, the brain could actually lay the information on that signal. And the thought of your wealth or your health can be carried on the frequency of that heart emotion. Emotions are the end product of an experience, right? Epigenetics says it's the environment that signals the gene. If the environment signals the gene and the end product of an experience in the environment is an emotion, that person's signaling genes ahead of the environment. And now they're biologically believing, behaving, and actually becoming that person. So if the person sustains that state, and we look at novice meditators that come for a week, and 90% of them, and the metabolites, not just a few, the majority of the metabolites and novice meditators suggest that their body's in a different life. Don't expect anything in your life to change if your environment is controlling your feelings and thoughts. And if your environment is controlling how you feel and think, and I say to you, Aubrey, why are you so upset today? Oh, well, this person is upsetting me. What you're really saying is that person is controlling your feelings and your thoughts, and that means you're a victim to your environment. So to turn that around and you start realizing your feelings and thoughts create your environment, and you start seeing the effects of you at cause, you're going to react less to the people in your life because you're going to understand that you'll be back to the victim consciousness. And when you start seeing that you're creating outcomes in your life, you're going to believe more that you're the creator of your life and less the victim of your life. And I say, the more you practice it, the better you get at it. Believe in the thought, I can't meditate, or I don't have enough time, or I'm a really important person, or I got too many emails to answer, or it's garbage day, or it's my mother's fault, it's my ex's fault. I want to complain, I want to blame, I want to make excuses, I want to lay down, my bladder's full, I like this, what am I doing wrong? They're agitated, impatient. That's the personality that has been hardwired and conditioned emotionally into the past that's resisting the unknown. It would rather cling to suffering than take a chance in possibilities. So our events, we say, okay, here's the knowledge, and I can say now with a great degree of certainty, more than ever, that if you actually do this and you stretch yourself a little bit further than where you would normally go at home, your brain will change. And if you teach people how to do this over and over again, and no different than training an animal, the body is the animal.
Are you training the body that you're in charge? Is that what you're doing?
You're telling the body it's no longer the mind, that you're the mind.
Yes.
And when you do that, those victories add up, and then all of a sudden, there's a liberation of energy. There goes the guilt, there goes the pain, there goes the whatever. It doesn't matter if it's health, it doesn't matter if it's wealth or success, it doesn't matter if it's a loving relationship, a change in a career, a mystical experience. Whatever it is, the person all of a sudden starts to relax into the present moment. The greatest challenge when we have strong emotions that are stored in the brain and body is it's very difficult to think greater than how we feel. I think that is the challenge. And feelings are a record of the past. So the person, if they can't think greater than how they feel, then they can't see a possible future because they're looking at that future through the lens of their past biology. And so the best thing for a person to do if they're truly, truly committed to change is to really understand what change means and really understand that there's a biology and a very specific explanation of what change is, okay? So the person says, I didn't create this reality. Okay, you didn't create that reality. I didn't ask for the life that I'm living. Okay, you didn't ask for the life that you're living. Okay, I didn't pick these parents somehow. I was born into this family. Okay, great. So now what? Now what? If our excuse to change is really, it's that person or that circumstance or that past that's really making me feel this way, you can do that for a while. But if you start reading and learning and filling your brain with knowledge and making new connections in your brain, you got more raw materials to start thinking about new possibilities. Now, that's what information does. Information, every time you learn something new, you're making thousands of synaptic connections in your brain. Repeat it, review it, think about it, talk about it, share it. And those circuits begin to create long-term connections called memories. And now you're adding more three-dimensional stitches into the tapestry of your gray matter, and you're building information to see that there are other ways to live. Now, you pick up a book on someone who's had trauma and they turn that trauma around and they live their life in joy and they see it differently, and you're picking up and relating with the story. And at the same time, you're realizing you're identifying with this character, and if they can do it, you can do it too. All right, so now the possibility exists. Okay, now the person really who truly wants to be happy says, I can't live in my past any longer. Okay, I understand that. I know it's hard. I know I'm gonna default back to my old personality maybe 10 times or 20 times or 100 times in one day. That's okay, because if I'm alive tomorrow, I'm going to try and do it better the next day. I'm not going to think, act, and feel this way. So how many times do we have to forget until we really stop forgetting and start remembering? How many times do we go unconscious in our waking day that we have to stop going unconscious and stay conscious? So the person who no longer wants to be, and I hate to use this word, victimized by their life, but excusing themselves from the possibility that there could be an alternative way to live, a new life to live in. The person who excuses themselves that way is because they can't imagine a new life greater than how they typically feel. And of course, it takes trauma or disease or diagnosis or loss or betrayal for the person to be so knocked out of balance that they finally say, I have to change. And they can tell you exactly where they were, the time of day it was, who they were with when they made up their mind to change. This happens thousands of times in our research. The person says, I'm making up my mind in this moment, and they make a decision with such firm intention that the amplitude of that decision carries a level of energy that causes their body to respond to their mind. That the choice that they're making in that moment in time is a moment in time they will never forget. In other words, the stronger the emotion they felt when they made that choice, independent of what was going on in their environment and their life, the more they'll remember the choice they're making. That's what emotions do. And that gives the body a sampling or a taste of the future. They're changing their state of being in one instant. Everybody has done this at some point in their life, right? Where they have to catch the thought. They have to catch how they speak, the act. They have to notice, ooh, this is that weird feeling again. I'm not going to just stay in this feeling. Can I change it, right? So then, if you remind yourself every single day of who you no longer want to be before you start your day, become conscious of your unconscious self, so conscious that you don't go unconscious in your waking day. The next fundamental question is, if your personality creates your personal reality, what thoughts do I want to fire and wire in my brain? And with attention, with presence and intention, energy, begin to fire and wire that thought. If you can fire and wire that thought, you start installing the neurological hardware in your brain. Keep doing it, and it starts acting like a software program. It becomes more automatic. That's the new voice in your head that says you can, it's possible, or whatever. And then, how are you going to behave in the Zoom meeting? How are you going to behave with your children? How are you going to behave with your ex? How are you going to be today when you open your eyes? Now, here's the cool part, and you know this. The act of closing your eyes and mentally rehearsing who you're going to be, planning your actions in the day. Mental rehearsal shows that you could actually install the neurological hardware in your brain to look like you already did it or it already happened. Now the brain's no longer a record of the past. It now becomes a map to the future. Okay, we've all rehearsed something in our life and our minds over and over again. Keep doing it, keep rehearsing it, keep reviewing it, and it starts to become more automatic. And you could actually program a person then to behave as a happy person. No magic there. You installed the circuits. Now here's the hardest part. Can you teach your body emotionally what that future would feel like before it happens? In other words, don't wait for your healing to feel gratitude. Don't wait for your new relationship to feel love. Don't wait for the mystical moment to feel awe. That's kind of the old model of reality of cause and effect. Let's wait for something out there to happen to take away this emptiness, this guilt, this lack, this suffering, whatever. What if I could condition my body emotionally into the future? So then we started studying not only brain coherence, but we started studying heart coherence. Could a person trade resentment and watch their heart beat in a really irregular fashion to a more coherent fashion where when they're feeling gratitude, when they're feeling inspiration, when they're feeling love, could they practice that enough times, so much so that they can condition their body into the emotion of the future? Now, here's the cool part about that. Our research shows you could absolutely do that and do it so well that you feel like the future that you're in wanting to experience has already happened. And when it feels like it's already happened, you feel less separate from it, which means you're no longer looking for it. Why would you look for it if you feel like it's already happened? Now, to become familiar with the old self and then fire and wire and condition the body emotionally and chemically and become familiar with the new self, if you're truly in the experiment of life and I truly change my personality, there should be some evidence in my world that there's been some change, either in my body and in my life and in some way. And literally, their biology changes. Their immune system changes. We've isolated thousands of metabolites that show that there's a flourishing going on in the body. The body's responding. It's believing emotionally that it's living in a different environment. That's the key.
Because you made it this far in a video, I want to celebrate you. Most people start and don't finish. Most people never actually follow through. Most people say they want something, but they don't ever do the work to actually get it. But you are different. You are special. Believe Nation, you made it here all the way to the end, and I love you. So as a special celebration, if you put a hashtag believe down in the comments below on this video, I will showcase you and celebrate you somewhere on the screen in a future video because you are awesome. For 10 more amazing rules from Bruce Lipton, check the video right there next to me. I think you'll love it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.
Consciousness is creating your reality. If you put a picture of fear into your reality, then your biology behavior will manifest things to be afraid of. Because this is a short statement, but to me it's the most powerful one.